couple of weeks ago, I made a video talking about the pairing of Dan Humphrey and Blair Waldorf and why I personally think that they would have never worked out together. I am of the personal opinion that although they make good friends, good lovers is something that wouldn't be in the cards for them, as Dan wants something that Blair most certainly can give him, but that Serena provides him with in spades, i.e., a very, very, very low self esteem. See, I made that video and thought that that was it, that I could move on with my day until sometime later in the future when I would make my Serena van der Woodsen video. Because you see, I find her a complicated mess that I personally love diving into just to understand her psyche and her choices throughout the seasons. However, what pulled me short were several comments I got about how Chair fans, which for those who don't know is the pairing between Chuck Bass and Blair Waldorf, are pathetic and so stupid. That Dan's character development was shunted for the sake of Chuck, who was more popular, and the show wanted him to end up with Blair, even though Chuck is trash and a rapist, and Blair, with all her flaws, doesn't deserve him, yada yada yada. As you can tell from the screenshot, this person was really pressed. And after laughing at the comment, because in the very same video I'd expressed that Blair would have been better served ending up without anyone and instead be on our way to ruling the world, because that is what my baby girl needs and deserves. But alas, the commenter either didn't hear that part, skipped it completely, or was utterly focused on the Chair Bad Dare, which is the ship name for Dan and Blair, by the way. They're good. And I'm just over here like, babe, none of them are good. The entire premise of Gossip Girl is that everyone is trash. Rich people will keep rich peopling, and until we get the chance to eat the rich, let them entertain us first. Like, I thought we all knew that. However, realizing that there are some people like that commenter who do have that thought, especially about the character of Chuck Bass, it made me realize the necessity of just making a quick video to talk about this. Because I don't know who needs to hear this, but none of the St. Jude boys or Constant Billard girls are written as good people. We are not meant to perceive them that way. Every single character in the show has done some shitty things. A lot of it is either propelled forward and supported by their wealth, their desire for love, no matter how it hurts and burns, or their thirst for vengeance, or it might be a mix of all three. And the way in which the show portrays this, it doesn't matter whether they are rich as the Basses or as influential as the Archibalds or Vanderbilt, or they are old money like the Rhodes, or darlings of their society like the Vanderwoodsons or the Waldorfs, or ordinary people like the Humphreys. Sorry, quick song break. We're just ordinary people. We don't know which way to go. 'Cause we're ordinary people. Maybe we should take it slow. Take it slow. This time we'll take it slow. Take it slow. This time we'll take it slow. Sorry, y'all. I've had that song stuck in my head for days. But as I was saying, even ordinary people like the Humphreys and Vanessa Abrams all fall into the same trap. Because the basic message of the entire show and the lives of these characters is that wealth and the proximity to wealth does have the capacity to corrupt and change you. And that when you're used to being at the top of the social chain, it is much easier to treat everybody else as disposable pawns to further your agenda. And this applies across boards to practically all the characters, including my beloved Blair Waldorf. Now, is this me attempting to justify Chuck's behavior? Hell no. The show makes it pretty clear that Chuck Bass is a sexual predator. Yes, he might not have succeeded in his attempt to rape Jenny or Serena, but it doesn't make him any less a dirtbag. His character is written and portrayed that way to be representative of the wealthy prep school boys who do navigate their social circles that way. using their wealth and privilege and the cover of the parties and the decadent lifestyle that is inherent in such an opulent environment to prey on the women and the people around them. Chuck Bass is a great portrayal of how these type of men do get away with it. How they navigate their circles and come around to cleansing their image, and they succeed because they are charming, wealthy, and attractive. And with someone of their class on their arm as their partner, they often succeed in that pivot, which is what we see with Chuck. Now, do I agree that part of what made Chuck work as a character was also because he was played by Ed Westwick, who did give the character a certain appeal with his swagger and the way in which he portrayed him? Yes. Did that portrayal still convey the slimy nature of Chuck Bass? Yes, because he's supposed to. Now, I do have the feeling that part of the reason why that commenter went off on that rant, and they did find their way into responding to other comments on that video as well, touting how cheer fans are stupid and delusional and whatever. But I do think that part of the reason why the commenter probably went off on that rant was because in the video I had mentioned that even though my preference was that Blair ends up alone and on the fast track to taking over the world, I didn't mind either that she ended up with Chuck. Because unlike Dan, who did like to pretend to himself that he wasn't cut from the same scheming cloth like the rest of them, Chuck does recognize Blair's schemes and is quite willing to actively participate in them with her. Because as we all know, the couple who schemes together stays together. And you know what? I do stand by that. As much as I love and absolutely adore Blair Waldorf, I am not about to pretend that she hasn't done some horrendous shit in the show. Her basically banishing Jenny from the entirety of New York when it took two to tango, and Chuck was just as guilty for that consensual snafu sex he had with her. Her minions basically ruining Jenny's fashion show when she snuck back in, all to get the praise and affirmation from Blair, who was pissed at Jenny for trying to return after her banishment. Her basically trying to oust Serena as a drug addict, which instead ousted Eric as a drug addict. The way she tried screwing with her father's boyfriend and basically shared Cyrus's marital issues with his ex-wife with her mother to try and force a breakup. And let us not forget the way she went after Mrs. Carr for giving her a bad grade. Like, girl, what? She knew she didn't put in the effort. She knew she deserved the grade she got. But because it was going to impact her chances of getting into Yale, she had the woman fired and humiliated and ruins her chances at ever working as an educator ever again. Like, sure, what Mrs. Carr did afterwards was horrible. But remember my earlier point at the start of the video? None of these people are saints. That's the whole premise of the show. The rich move through life like they are untouchable. They always find a way to bounce back and rise back up to being amongst their own kind, which we see definitely reflected at the end of the show. And the poor, or those who are not so rich, they find out that the proximity to the entitlement that level of wealth breeds, in turn, brings out the worst versions of themselves. Even Vanessa, who starts off as pretty decent, warps and changes the further into the show we go. Her stealing Jenny's letter to Nate so that she can end up with Nate, her recording Blair's private conversations and insisting on keeping the recording in a documentary, clearly crossing several lines. Which, when you consider it, is something she does a lot, because I'm not about to forget that she was the one who sent off Dan's writing to be published even after Dan explicitly tells her not to. Like, sure, it does end well and the response is positive to his writing, but it doesn't negate the fact that she did cross a line, several. And that is something that she consistently does. Hell, at some point, Nate does tell her to her face that she's become more like Blair, and not in a complimentary way. Although we all know that Blair would never have schemed with Juliet, which led to Serena being drugged, and when that happened, Vanessa, to maintain her image in front of the Humphreys and not lose Dan, refuses to confess to the fact that Serena didn't relapse or do drugs. She was drugged by them. I go into details with regards Vanessa because when she's introduced in the show, she was indeed the most honest and down to earth of the lot. If anyone would have the capacity to show us what it is like to remain untainted by all that wealth and power and excess, it would ideally have been her. The fact that that is not the case, that she in turn does become like the rest of the crew, confirms the core essence of what Gossip Girl is. All these characters are trash. There is no attempt to redeem them or fix them. Even to the very last, they are still selfish and self-serving and blinded by the excesses in the world in which they live. Rufus was the one character I'd hope would stay untainted by the entirety of their world, and of course, he ends up fucking Ivy and trying to fuck over Lily in the process. Like, boy, what? And speaking of Lily, girl, I will never forget or forgive the fact that you had your own daughter arrested to prove a point. I repeat, all of these characters are trash. Nate, who was obsessing over his girlfriend's best friend and had sex with her, then spent all that time doing Google eyes at said best friend until his girlfriend became his ex and moved on, and now he wanted his ex back. And I'm just like, baby, what are you doing? He did have a gorgeous head of hair though. Like Ned Archibald, that hair was banging. Or the damn Duchess, who was fucking a teenager and her stepson in equal measure and had the audacity to be uppity with Blair. Like, what? Excuse me? Which just reminded me of Vanessa screwing over Blair's leverage in that matter, which Blair had planned on using to pay off Archibald's debt so Nate's father can come back home and be reunited with the family. And God's, all I do is sigh. And let's not forget Jenny's I can be Blair Waldorf, I can do bad all by myself, Humphrey. And just every time I think of Jenny, I think of how she basically betrayed her friend. Also, she could have a rich, preppy DL boyfriend to up her status and win her points with the constant girls. Of course, it all blew up in her face when Eric told Blair to send the blast. But I still find that scene hard to watch till date because, gods, Eric deserved better. And of course, there's no need for me to go into details about Dan Humphrey. His very identity as Gossip Girl and the fact that he created it in order to gain inroads among Manhattan's elite already shows how much he craves that power and wealth and access. And if it means spying on his classmates, using his sister and leveraging on Serena's daddy issues to get him where he wants to be and to the spot he desires, then he is definitely unafraid to do so. And Serena herself referred to the sleeping with your best friend's boyfriend, which, messy, entitled, girl, what are you thinking? And I would never be able to get over her filming herself having sex with Dan when Dan was still in a relationship with Blair, all for the sole purpose of showing it to Blair so Blair can leave Dan alone. And I'm just like, I would never understand that reasoning, not going to lie. Because it is Serena once again doing what she started the show with, having sex with her best friend's boyfriend. Except at least in the previous case, she was drunk and unaware. And two, she didn't film herself having sex with Nate. I could go on and on about these characters. Not a single one of them did not do something fucked up at one point or the other. And yet with everything they've pulled and done, the show is pretty consistent with washing it all away at the end, which to me, like I said earlier, is indicative of how people with wealth and power are constantly reinventing themselves, living in a world where it doesn't feel like they have to deal with the consequences or repercussions of their choices. And instead, they just circle around each other, in each other's space, causing ripples of discomfort and disaster in their wake and moving on to the next thing. Because if there's anything that wealth loves to do, it is to band together and protect itself and its interest and those who have it, whilst all the while having the people with said wealth and power and influence be one of the most shittiest people on the planet. And that is what we got with Gossip Girl. None of these characters are bastions of goodness. Every single one of them have done some fucked up shit. And at the end, they still band together to protect and look out for each other and carry out their individual interests. And I don't know about you, but that's a pretty depressing thing to really think about. To consider that people like that do exist within our society and that This is their lives for real. And so, like I said earlier, all we can do right now is be entertained by the parties, the dresses, the opulence of it all, until it's time to eat the rich anyway. And when that time comes, I am ready to chomp down hard. But that is just me. What about you? What are your thoughts on some of the most vile things that these characters have done throughout the course of the show? Drop them in the comments, please. Hit the like button if you've watched this far and haven't done so yet. Share the video if you want. Consider supporting me on Patreon if you can. And until tomorrow's video, do remember, obsessing over the things you love? Perfectly valid coping mechanism.